yes, sir.
And going into the show, what would you do as far as water, carbs, sodium?
Like I mentioned, I was a high carb dieter. And that was even with honey, like we still was on a high carbs. But I was huge, I drank a lot, like as far as fluid. So I would drink up to 3 gallons of water a day. And what I would do is I slowly cut it down until like the last 2 days I would just basically sip. I had to cut water early, and that's the thing is I retained a lot of water. So the last week before a show, I would lose, 15 pounds usually the last week. So if I was, cutting down, I mean, I would be 270, 275 until I cut my water to 255. So the sodium would stay in, and then of course Monday before Friday, Saturday show, I would start dropping the sodium down and keep a little bit in there, but I wouldn't add any more salts or anything like that. I start cutting the eggs out, any natural sodium, so I stay with just whatever's in the meat, whatever else. But the fluid would slowly taper down until I would not drink a lot. Definitely not the last 24 hours, but I would cut everything down in increments, so I don't just drop it down. But I did usually have to keep some fluid in there because, of course, if you drink that much water, you can't go to zero water. I never did distilled water, anything like that. But that's the tricky part, is like I did have a fluid issue, and like I mentioned, like taking antiestrogens for a show always helped me the best. Once I learned how to do that a little better.
What would that be, letrozole?
Yeah, like that letrozole. I did do some Novodex, but higher dosage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As I got closer.
And as far as carb enough, would you deplete with my carb?
I would carb up some, but it was just by how my body looked. Remember, my low carbs were still 400, so I'd add in maybe 300-400 more, and that's how I would kind of evaluate and pull back or whatever. But there wasn't a time where I wasn't super flat anyway, because if you're eating that much and with as much muscle as I had, I really wasn't flat. I didn't have that real issue. A lot of guys, you look at guys and say, oh, I'm flat right now. I'm like, man, you look really full to me, you know what I mean? When you're at that level, it's really hard for someone to look flat. But I did have to add in some carbs, but sometimes, I just stayed with like, that 400 grams of carbs.
And as far as what sauces would that be opening with Vitargo?
I would use a little Vitargo, but obviously the fluid was a little restrictive. But that was really it. I would use just like if I couldn't eat it, and that was the problem is when your fluid is that low, it's hard to eat the food, right? But I mostly ate sweet potatoes, or yams, some oatmeal, rice cakes, that kind of stuff. I couldn't really eat that much, but it was mostly sweet potatoes that I would carb up on. Not as much rice, because the rice didn't fill me as much as the potatoes would.
Would you carry that on for the day of the show as well?
Yes. And then, after prejudging, whatever, I have some burgers and fries and a little fluid and just keep the salt down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I always think that's good after prejudging. So if you guys are competing, like, on a Saturday, like, I always suggest after prejudging having, like, a burgers and fries, just, keep the fluids down or whatever. That gives your body a little kick, Most people are just, they don't realize, you always look better the day after the show, right? After you eat a pizza or whatever, you're like, man, I should have competed like this, right? But normally it's just illusionary. We're not on stage under the lights and whatever else. We always think we look better. That's the whole thing. It's always great to have a set of eyes. So if you're going into competition, I always tell people have a set of eyes to give you honest evaluation. Okay, because don't have your like cheerleading section telling you like, yeah, you look great, and then get up on stage and say what was wrong. It's like I don't look, look as good, but you always need a good set of eyes to take a look. I always had too many eyes in my opinion. Everyone had all these different opinions on how I should look, especially at that level.
So, if you use like the new generation Collins and Pop Tarts and stuff, do you think you would have won 10 Olympics, Jay? It's nice to just hear you saying what you're doing, and it's so basic. Now it's all kind of.
Well,
sorry, Harry Bowles as well.
If Ronnie Coleman wasn't there, I would have won 10 Olympics. think it's gotten out of control with, you know, I'll touch a little bit, I think, you know, I think the drugs, I think people take too much drugs because I think they're limited on what they have availability as far as everyone in their basement's making drugs, right? So I think, okay, well, this probably isn't as good as what it should be, so I'm gonna take double the dosage, right? I think there's too much information on the internet where, this is what I don't understand, okay? So I sit here and tell you I ate fish and rice and potatoes and I eat egg whites and stuff. Why would I change it at the end? Like, why would I start throwing in all this craziness at the end and doing all these different things? I mean, obviously, if you're flat or whatever, then you have to take some emergency things and eat, like, sugars and whatever else. But you should not have to change anything. You should be ready for the show, like, 2 weeks out and just basically coast your way in. You should drop a little. When we talk about the water, you shouldn't have to drop a ton of water. I mean, I did just I held water just because I was eating so many carbs and everything else, but as I slowly took that down, you know, the water came out automatic. I didn't have to like, okay, I gotta take a ton of diuretics and do this. I mean, obviously there were diuretics involved, but it wasn't like, oh my goodness, I have to lose this weight. Like, it was just known, like, okay, I'm gonna lose that weight. But these crazy, like, kamikaze ways, it's different than I've ever seen, than I was used to. I think, you know, guys are doing just crazy stuff now and trying to find like a special ingredient. I don't think it's necessary. I really think you should be ready for the show and not have to change a lot of things. And that's why I said, like, sometimes, like I told you, like, my low carb day was 400, like, I could coast into the show pretty much with that. I think carb loading and carb depleting, like, drastically, like, people go 0 carbs and then they carb, like, I don't think it should have to be to that extreme. Because then you have to worry about, is your body going to come back if you 0 carb like that, you know?
So you wouldn't do like depletion workouts?
I would do depletion workouts, but I mean, I just wouldn't go like 0 to 100. You know what I mean? Like, I think people, their sway is way too much. And that's why I think the way I dieted, which I call the zigzag diet, where I would do carb cycling. So I do lower days, like 3 days in a row, and then on the 4th day, I do higher carbs, and then I bring it back down. But when I did that spring, like, protein, carbohydrates have the same calorie counts, right? So when the protein's up, the carbs are down, and then, you know, when the carbs come down, the protein goes up. So you still have the same calories, but it's just from different sources. So, like, we call that the zigzag diet. That's how you trick your body into really taking down body fat without burning up muscle tissue. And you give yourself 16 weeks to train for a show. Even if you're in great shape, I mean, I can tell you, a lot of these shows I was in good condition, and I still give myself 20 weeks to prepare. You've got to give yourself enough time, and then you practice the posing, you do all the things that lead into it. So, especially in today's society, like even with the women's and men's, even the classic men, you've got to practice the posing. You've got to have that down pat, and that's going to help condition you too. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, you know, do your quarter turns twice and do your poses. I didn't put 30 minutes every day into posing. I would go through my quarter turns with whoever and just say, okay, let's see how I look. You know, and I put the mirror there, and then eventually I take the mirror away so I knew the poses, and that's how you slowly learn. A lot of people are scared to get on stage. They don't know the poses, but have someone walk you through the poses, use the mirrors, and then take the mirrors away so you get used to it. Everyone's going to have stage fright. Anyone that doesn't compete, the first time I was so nervous getting up there, man. It was so, like, you know, I just thought it was so strange, too. You know, I was up there in trunks and putting on this color. My mom's like, what do you have to put this dye on for, you know? And I remember putting it on, and I was putting it on under a tree outside my first show, and it was like, man, this is, like, strange, but it's bodybuilding cult. That's what it was, and that's what I wanted to do my whole life. And I'm still a fan of it. I still try to attend and support a lot of people that do the shows, but to be honest, like, I think we need more excitement in the business, like, you know, the routines and all that stuff. That's why, like, I always like the fitness stuff on the women's side, because at least there's, like, a lot of action with it. But I like to see some drama, man. I like to see, like, I want to see Ty Green and Phil Heath fight that year at Olympia. You know? I thought they were going to fight. But me and Ronnie didn't have that. We would talk so much shit, though. Like, what you guys don't realize, like, you can go back and watch the videos, and when we turned to the back, like, I would say so much shit to Ronnie. When the judges couldn't see us, because the judges watch us. I remember a couple times, like, Jay, you know, you can't talk so much up there, you know? I'm like, man, is it really that big of a deal? Like, hey, there was a lot of people watching or whatever, and I would, like, we turn to the back and we do the poses, and I'd say, all right, Ron, let's do this shit, you know, you ready? And they call lights out. Here's a lights out shot. And of course, I think in my head, no, he's not beating me that bad, but he was beating me. So I miss those days. You know, I didn't have as much fun with Phil up there. Like you saw when I handed him the crown or whatever, and I was like happy for him. I really was. I wonder if he felt the same. Like, hey, you know, shit, Jay's losing his title, give it to me. But I didn't have as much fun when Ronnie was gone. It was the excitement was kind of out of it. I probably should have retired in 09. That was the best. I knew in 09, like, I was never going to top that. And that's kind of sad because I knew, like, okay, this is my all-time best. And in 10, I wasn't as good. Obviously, 11, I lost and had the bicep tear. But, you know, and then Phil came into his reign. But I think Phil was his best in 11. I mean, that was probably the best look we've ever seen Phil. We're curious to see how he looks this year, but I didn't have as much fun with those guys and Kai Greens, and like we didn't have that relationship that Ronnie and I had. There was a lot of history, and even when I won my first pro show in 2000, champion, I remember Ronnie called me after prejudging, and he's like, "Congratulations!" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "You won," and I'm like, "Well, the show's not over yet." He's like, "No, you won." I'm like, "Well, this is fucking rigged. Like, there's no And, you know, and that back then, like, there was no way to really know, like, I won or lost. And the judges told, well, Jay's going to win. And I was like, okay, well, this ruined my whole moment, you know. And Ronnie's like, but it was pretty cool that Mr. Olympia called me and he's like, congratulations. I always thought a year later what he thought when I was at the Olympia. Like, here I was, you know, I finished 8th that year after the Night of Champions, so Ronnie was probably like, oh yeah, this kid's like the future, but I'll be gone by the time he comes up. And then the next year we were like battling it out, you know. So it was pretty, I'm sure he thought about that after a while. And Ronnie never admitted that I was like next to mine. I don't know if you ever remember, he said Victor Martinez was going to win Mr. Olympia after him. I thought that was pretty disrespectful. But yeah, I think he just did it to play mind games, and he was good at that. When? Well, I was ahead by 6 after prejudging. After prejudging, I was ahead by 6, and then he came back, and I don't know if you look back at the video, that's the year that that's when 9/11 happened. So he pulled the flag out of his trunks, which was like the whole thing with the props. You weren't supposed to have props, so he pulled the flag out or whatever, and somehow miraculously won the show. And then he fell to the floor, and I was standing there, and like every time Ronnie fell to the floor, and he was crying, and I was like, okay, what do I do now, you know? And they give me the award, but I was just so ecstatic to be like number 2 in the world, man. And then they called me like 2 weeks later, and like, listen, you know, out of all the guys who failed the diuretic test, I said, this is a joke, like, come on. So I fought it, and I, you know, hired an attorney, and I was like, you know, this is some bullshit, whatever, and I ended up beating it because they said I failed for like 6 diuretics. I'd be dead if I took 6 diuretics, you know. It's so strange. And I left Joe Weider that year and signed with another company, and I thought there was like a lot of politics involved. And I remember, like when I did fail the test, I went to Joe's office and I got into a big fight with him, and he kicked me out and everything. And this is a guy that brought me to California. And I said, you know, I don't understand this. Like, and he's like, I'm not in charge of this. That's the promoter. It was Wayne DeMille who was promoting it at the time. And I said, what's wrong? You know, it's testing for these diuretics. And I said, you know, the guys are finding ways around the tests. And, you know, it depends on what nutritionist you work with, because everyone's still using the diuretics to get in shape. And then, you know, the next day they tested the Arnold, and I passed that test, won the Arnold, and then they got rid of the diuretic testing after that. They never really tested. And, you know, they could never have drug testing in bodybuilding. It's just, I think it would be kind of ridiculous now. So, went from there. That's it. Any other questions, guys?
what would you say is the Jay Cutler mentality? You know, you said about when you spot a guy or somebody that's got the mentality, is it something that comes when you see it, or is it something that you actually look for?
You know, you have to have that vision. You have to have the vision, the mindset to be focused on one thing and not be distracted and not let, like, if someone's involved with, like, what people think, you know, that's not so good. They have to be able to push all those things aside and they say, okay, I want to be this, I want to be the best. What I knew about Phil is, like, he had the basketball background, so he was disciplined as an athlete, so I knew it could carry over. It's just like me, like, working on the farm. Like, I hated my parents because I had to get up every day and go to work. And I was a kid that, like, everyone else was going away on school vacations. Like, they were going away to, like, nice places that are warm, and I was here, you know, like, lugging concrete forms or working on the farm. So, whereas they would drive me to bed at 6 in the morning, and listen, I was partying in high school, I'll be honest with you guys. Like, I'd go out and I'd be, like, drinking and stuff. And then they'd wake me up and, like, man, I gotta get up and go to work. Are you kidding me? I'm not getting up. And they're like, you're getting up and going. And I hated it, but it really set me up to be the best in what I did. And that was bodybuilding, and it carried over to business. I think bodybuilding gave me a great structure to continue to succeed in all aspects of my life, you know, and that's the greatest thing I can tell you guys from all my experiences is the relationships that I built, like traveling around and meeting people. And listen, there's a lot of people I do business with that I don't necessarily like. I don't have any bad relationships with people. Like, you'll never hear, oh, Jay's a jerk, or he screwed me out of this or that. But the truth is I've developed so many great relationships, and those relationships somewhere along in my career have become great assets in what I've done, whether it be business or networking, for, you know, for bodybuilding. And, you know, I feel I was a good representative for the Mr. Olympia title. Like, I traveled around and I gave people time, and like, I went back to business, you know, and I taught people, like, this is how you do it right. I mean, you could talk about the question he asked, like the kamikaze type stuff. Like, that stuff didn't exist in my life. Like, I don't do anything half-assed. I go everything full tilt. So I think that the mentality has to be like, you have to be dedicated and have a game plan. And you got to know, okay, this is what I'm going to do to get there, and I'm not going to let anything get in my way. So it's kind of like a road. Some people take roads like this. My road was straight. You know, I knew, okay, I wanted to be the best at what I did. But I wasn't like, I am going to be Mr. Olympia, like, because I knew that was a very, very far vision. I took steps to get to that point, and when I was right there knocking at the door, I said, wow, I can actually win this thing. And eventually I did. When everyone told me I couldn't, no second place Mr. Olympia ever went ahead and won. And I was able to break that trend, which is awesome.
Beautiful.
So believe in yourself, you can do anything, no matter what your age is, you know. Any other questions, guys? Yes, sir.
So, you, Ronnie, you get really heavy in the off-season, and then there's more old school people that they heavy, that's their age 15 pound more competition with it. What's your reason behind that? You think it's more effective?
Well, I mean, I don't think, you know, for me, like, I was pretty, like I said, I got in shape. I was like in the 270s usually when I was in good shape, and just had to drop really water from there. But I think, you know, you want to be able to eat in the off-season. I would think eating off-season should be the same diet as when you diet for a show. Obviously, I told you I hated the fish, so I didn't eat that in the off-season. But I still ate the same rices and potatoes and egg whites and whatever. Just more of it in the off-season where I wasn't, and of course I had my cheat meals, right? When I dieted for a show, I can tell you guys, up until the very end, I did not have any cheat meals for 16 weeks. Chris Aceto never had, like, cheat meals in there. Now he does with all his guys, which I think is kind of odd because he never did it with me. Kind of changed. But I ate the same foods pretty much all the time. But to be off season, like, I would eat as much as I could. So I ate a lot of pasta when I wanted to get big. You know, I ate red meat 2 or 3 times a day when I was trying to put on size, where I wouldn't necessarily eat that when I was training for the show. I'd cut down to like 1 red meat meal a day, maybe 2 if I was really trying to stay fuller. I still ate pasta on the contest diet when I was lean enough. If I need to fill up quick, the pasta always worked well for me. I was a big believer in dextrose after training too. Like, I used, you know, like powders around the training. I think protein shakes are really good. Like, protein powder is good around the training, the first thing in the morning when you eat. extra. But as far as supplementation, I mean, listen, you can take the glutamines, creatines, a lot of products contain that. I use the multivitamin, but you talk about the Vitargo, the cod powders, that kind of stuff, those are beneficial. I think especially in today's training, but I always was eat your food. Food is the ultimate supplement, you know, supplements are supplements with a great diet, right? So I think food is crucial, and I tell everyone, you cannot miss meals. You have to eat your meals daily. So I had my portions that I would eat, you know, same foods at the same time every day. It was very, very repetitive, but it worked well for me.
Would you work off the mirror then when you're trying to gain size, so that you didn't put too much body fat on?
Yes.
Would you just things from that?
I never like tested my body fat, but I would always look at, okay, I don't want to get a certain, I would always stay lean in certain areas. I tend to hold more body fat like in my lower back, obviously my ass, whatever, but I always had good abs. So for me, I always kind of walked that line, but I couldn't really get over 300 pounds without really trying anyway. Some people are usually like a pizza away from 300, you know what I'm saying? So, but I ate burgers and fries, like was my cheat meal. We had an In-N-Out burger in Vegas, that was like my favorite. Sometimes I ate some sweets, but I pretty much stayed on a pretty rigid diet most of the time. I ate pretty healthy.
Sometimes if you're too restrictive and you try to grow up, it can have a detriment.
You can't be too restricted, but I think people are scared of carbs. I think people are scared of carbs. But if you're timing your carbs right, meaning if you're eating them first thing in the morning or after training, that should be your biggest calorie-dense meals.
Yeah.
And I think too many people are like, well, I'm going to eat carbs and eat them at the wrong time, and that's when they tend to store body fat. You got to be precise about when you're taking your carbohydrates in mostly.
Would you have simple carbs before you train?
Usually after, or I would sip on them while I train. A good like carbohydrate combo is good. The branched chains. Branched chains should be taken around like during the training. Remember, you have your protein after it's loaded with branched chains, right? So I would take in like I would drink Gatorade even when I train, or I would use the powdered Gatorade, the one you mix. But I've done everything. I drank Coca-Cola. I've done everything after training. If I didn't have anything there, I would eat Twizzlers or something. You know what I mean?
Just to spike your insulin.
Yeah, just to like get glycogen in there quick. Because my workouts were long sometimes. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Some of those back leg workouts, like they were brutal. I mean, I would train for 2 hours sometimes, hour and a half. I think the sufficient time in the gym is always, like we say, an hour in the gym, 45 minutes to an hour. Shouldn't take you that long to train a body part. Like if you're in the gym 3 hours, like I was in the very beginning, it's way too long. I still run with these kids nowadays. I'm like, how long are you in the gym? Like 3 hours. Like, what do you do for 3 hours? Watch
results at first as well.
No, you see results. I mean, listen, there were days when I used to tell people, yeah, I put on 50 pounds my first year of training. I'm like, oh my God, how'd you put on 50 pounds? But now I can see these kids, like 13, 15. I'm like, how much weight you put on? 80 pounds. I'm like, man, I wish I put on 80 pounds the first year, you know. But they were like super skinny, like 120, 130 when they started. But what I notice now is the generation of they're younger kids working out now. Like yesterday there were kids here and they were like 16 and they're already like in the gym training. Like I didn't start till I was 18, but I go to like Australia, the age bracket's like super young there. The kids are good. Kids are like 15 and they're like already built up. So I think now this new generation of social media is giving these younger kids more knowledge. I mean, back then, if you didn't, a lot of kids walked by a Flex magazine in a supermarket, they didn't take a look at it, but now with social media, like you're breezing through stuff on your popular page, you see something cool that comes up, and even though the information I don't think it's necessarily great on social media, and a lot of people are just like, it's a facade, right? But there's some good knowledge that you can learn, especially from the YouTube stations and whatever. I think YouTube's like TV now. What else, guys? Anything else? I like to keep training.
Just straight back to it.
But listen, you don't keep training like you train for the show. I would just go lighter and just pump. And I would say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym until I get a good pump, and then that's it. If that takes 4 sets to do it, or if it takes 8 sets or 12 sets, doesn't matter. Just go in and get some blood moving, and listen, it's good, always good to rebound. You got to get some fullness back after the show. But I never stopped. I never took, like, these guys take, 6 months off or whatever, like the Kevin Never Own thing. I could never do that because I'm a full-time bodybuilder. I mean, I was still doing appearances. I wanted to look a certain way. And when I show up, I don't want people to be like, man, that guy used to be really big, So that's the way I looked at it when I was training. I mean, Ronnie liked to take those days off. He said it healed his body, but he's, Ronnie's shape right now isn't so good, And that's obviously contributing to the training that he was doing. All that good stuff.
What do you think the future is of bodybuilding? Do you think it'll come back strong
Yeah.
again?
I think what's going to happen is, and this is my prediction, and I'm usually right with certain things like this. We have classic now, and you have men's physique, and everyone thinks that they fit that division. And a lot of bodybuilders are getting out of bodybuilding, going to classic, thinking, okay, well, I'm not big enough, so I'm not doing well in bodybuilding. But what they're going to do is they're going to find out in a year or two, like, okay, well, I don't fit this because my waist is too big, or whatever. I'm going to go back to bodybuilding. I think bodybuilding is going to make another run. But as far as like pro bodybuilding, man, like these kids at 18 aren't looking at that and saying, I want to be the next Jay Cutler or Phil. I don't think they're looking at that because there's so much size involved. And it's scary to them, A lot of people, it's just their assumption is like, okay, that's a ton of steroids or whatever. But you got to remember that the 13 elite guys that have won the Mr. Olympia, even though I feel there should have been a lot more than 13, there's a lot of guys that should have won the Mr. Olympia that never did. They're elite, they just have the better gifts than everyone else. It doesn't matter how much drugs or whatever they did. They had a certain body type that would push to limitations is going to do better than the average person. So you got to, there's always going to be someone out there that if they put the effort forward, they could be the next. But it really depends. Like I said, that mentality means a lot. You have to be strong-minded to get in this business and continue to build the muscle. Because you can't build a Mr. Olympia physique in 2 or 3 years. It's a lot of years of density and commitment. As you see, like I said, it's just time in the gym and training and, getting that pump in the gym. Remember, it's expansion of the muscle tissue, getting out of the gym and feeding it. It's time and time and time again which gives the muscles that inflated look, right? And then the food has to dictate how much you continue to hold. And that's not going to happen in a short amount of time. Hence, that's why you have, guys, they move up from men's physique to classic and then eventually to bodybuilding. Reagan Grimes, perfect example, young guy, should be an open bodybuilder. He chose to do classic. He's going to do the classic Mr. Olympia. Probably be a one and done this year as far as whether he wins or loses. He's going to have to go into the open. He's not made to be a classic physique guy, He's 250 pound he's in bodybuilding no matter what. He has to get down to 222 for the classic. It's very difficult to do, especially when he's not overweight at 250. So I was born to be. I was always a heavyweight. Before they even had super heavy. My first teenage show, I competed at 214, earned my pro card at 248, and then I never had to weigh myself after that. I was always just open. That's a disadvantage when you talk about the Flex Lewis thing. I don't know what he weighs. He says he weighs 212, but that's not how much you think Flex Lewis weighs when he competes.
On stage.
215, 16, somewhere around there.
220.
So, what's he going to be if, he goes into the open? It's like, being restrictive, it's a little tough sometimes. So maybe he can grow body parts beyond what we think he can in the open class and really shock people. But, William Bonnick, I never thought would be third in the Mr. Olympia. I met him when he first started. I met Rolly Winkler when he first started. He came to see me. We have a picture together, and Rolly Winkler was just a normal sized guy, pretty much. And he's like one of the biggest guys out there now. He's a contender to be in the top 5 also this year. But I think he's too big. I think I was too big. I think at my biggest, I was too big.
So out of all the years in the Olympics that you won, what was your not necessarily what you wanted to do?
I was my best in 99 when I got second to last.
Yeah.
I think, I had like small waist and I had enough. My conditioning was good. I just didn't have what the other guys had, and that was maturity, you know, it's 25. So, I mean, there's pictures, I have black and white pictures when I'm on a beach and I'm like 240 and I'm like chiseled and I still look like somewhat normal, you know. I mean, let's be real. I wasn't normal. I mean, 300 pounds at 5'9". I mean, people's reaction is they laugh, you know. I mean, when people see me coming, I mean, what else are you gonna do? Like, if you're not, I mean, it's easy for anyone in this room because they like you recognize who I am, but when I walk down the street, you know, they see someone coming at you that big, and what else are you gonna do? I mean, you have to smile and say, damn, like, it's like seeing a hot girl, you know what I mean? You're not just gonna like look down at the floor and be like, wow, no. So, people kind of laugh. People would say stuff, you know what I mean? You have to have thick skin. And you can't get the fights everywhere you go, but, you know, I always get the steroids, you know, whatever, but I did it as a living, so.
How does that make you feel in a way? I mean,
Listen, I mean, I can sit here and tell you, like, you know, I knew what kind of work I did to put in to get to where I was, and I wish it was that easy, you know. I wish any guy, I mean, I hear these guys say if I took steroids, I could look like that, you know, but it doesn't work like that, you know.
that's right.
But it's disheartening sometimes that the society thinks that, but I mean, maybe after I took myself out of my show, what would I think too, you know? I mean, if it's like if I saw an obese person, I'd say, oh, that person eats way too much food. Maybe it's hereditary. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't really know. So it's really hard to judge. But I mean, it's not the norm. I mean, the norm is just the average person, right? But we chose not to be average. I mean, people that work out and build their bodies to. I call everyone a bodybuilder that goes in the gym and lifts weights. I consider everyone a bodybuilder. It doesn't matter. They don't have to be jacked up or anything like that, but we're building our bodies in the gym. I mean, I used to call us artists. I mean, we kind of transform our physiques to look our absolute best according to what we think is our genetic potential. Everyone has body parts. I just don't understand the people that like Tom Class had the biggest legs, right? But if I was him, I would have stopped training my legs because he was trying to be a bodybuilder and be balanced. Like, I know for me, I can honestly tell you guys, like, from 20 to 23, I barely trained my legs because my upper body needed to catch up. I didn't have great arms. I had small calves. I had big legs. I didn't have good hamstrings. I had, you know, wide back but no depth. I always had good shoulders and good quads. My chest was literally started here and ended here. I had half a chest. And I remember people say, your chest is weak, you know, so I started doing a ton of inclines. And I always preferred dumbbell work, okay? Anytime I barbell bench press and I went over 405, I almost tore my pec 3 times. And after that, I said, I'll never flat bench barbell. It's actually the worst exercise you can do for your shoulder joint. So anyone that flat benches, that doesn't do it competitively, like, it's very, very dangerous for pec tears, especially, you know, when the muscle gets weak or whatever. Like, if you build a lot of dense muscle, like, I know so many bodybuilders that ended their careers with pec tears. But you've got to be smart about your training. So I always took the dumbbells. Obviously, hammer strength kind of took over this. I think hammer strength is what kind of ruined bodybuilding, to be honest, in a sense, because I think, like, a lot of bodybuilders like, oh, I'm getting the same exercise out of hammer strength that I do, like the free weights, but I still think the core movements still need to be the basis. Like, you still have to have some core movements in your workout routine. Like, when I started, it was always squats, deadlift, bench press, that kind of stuff. But as I got, you know, smarter, I stayed away from the barbell bench press stuff. Not real good for the bodybuilders. I still do Smith machine or whatever, but you're limited so much with the barbell that I always think dumbbells are better. I always prefer dumbbell, even shoulder presses, that kind of stuff. Like I mentioned, you get a shoulder injury, you're knocked out, so you got to be careful with the shoulder joints. Tissue work, I always did a lot of massages. You guys that follow my videos know I did a ton of massage work. I'd fly over the country to work with the best therapists. I won $200,000 a year off the Mr. Olympia contest. I spent every dollar putting back into the show, I would say. All my money was really made off endorsement deals that I did and appearances and merchandising. So I had one therapist in Vegas, I paid like $400 a week for tissue work, and then I'd fly to California on my day off once a week, and I'd work with my therapist there, and that would cost me like $500 to do that. So I mean, every week I was spending upwards of $1,500, like, just on tissue work. It was crazy. But it kept my body really pliable, and I can tell you at 45, like, I can still do all the exercise. I have no joint pain whatsoever. I can still train. My shoulders, even after the bicep tear and all that, like it took me a year to have really full extension. That was the hardest part, and that's why I sat out 2012. I have no pain whatsoever. So I can go in the gym and train, and like I attribute a lot of that to the tissue work that I did taking care of my body. Like my body still feels really, really functional. And I can still look forward to training every day, where my other friends are like, man, I'm in so much pain. How are you? I mean, I train guys that are 30 years old that have more pain than me. And it's really, when they tore open my shoulder, when they did the surgery back when I was 38, the doctor says, man, it looks like you've never lifted weights in your life. Your shoulder has no arthritis, nothing in it. They were shocked. Because he said, I thought if you tear your shoulder open, it was going to be a disaster and everything else. He said everybody who I've worked on, like their shoulder joints are shot. He said he was actually pretty surprised how it looked. But it healed up pretty good. It was just like, I was always scared of tearing it again. When you tear a muscle, I mean, anyone ever tear a muscle in here? Like it's a feeling that's like, you don't want to feel again, you know what I mean? It feels like that electric shock. That was kind of a scary feeling, so. Even though I thought it was just a muscle strain. So I've done everything I can to avoid the injuries still now.
Would you ever like to get back up on stage again? And I don't mean to compete with the younger ones now, like Philly from the ones. But if they like they did a legendary thing or something, would you like that?
You know, I wouldn't want to be an old man up there, because I consider you say legends.
No, just for that buzz though, you know, just to be up in the lights, like you said, you loved it.
You know what? I'll tell you, I had this conversation like a few weeks ago with someone. I wish I wasn't a pro bodybuilder, because if I could go compete in some local show, like, and it wasn't a level to what you do, I kind of wish I could go back and say, okay, I want to forfeit my pro card and do an amateur show. Because it would give me motivation, because I'll be honest with you guys, being who I am, I have a hard time staying on track because of my travel schedule. And like every week I'm that guy on Monday, like, man, I'm going to give my diet 100% this week, and I'm going to train every day, and by Tuesday night I'm already blown, you know? So I'm just like everybody else, like every week it's like new goals. And then I find myself off track, because listen, training is important to me. Like I said, it's still my favorite part of the day, but it's like 10th on my list of priority of like, okay, how my body wants to look. You know, I'm maintaining a good body, like I'm staying lean, and I'm still like, I got good shape and everything, but I still want to, I like to get in the best shape, but I gotta dedicate myself for 10 weeks to do that or something, you know. I think I'd be in good shape in 10 weeks. But I would love to do a show, but I can't. Where am I going to go? I'm qualified for life, but I'm not going to go stand up on the stage and get embarrassed next to Phil Heath and these guys, you know? So I kind of wish I could reverse and go back to the amateur side and just do like a Jay Cutler classic or something. I guess I could always guest pose or whatever, but the problem is I take my clothes off. People are expecting to see all like the old me. I turn around and the back's like, that's the first thing that went. Like the back was like, as soon as I stopped training and doing all the crazy like one-arm rows and T-bar rows and the deadlifts and all that, like my back disappeared, you know. I used to have the crazy, and the shoulders were like, it looked like I wore football pads, you know. You watch that shit disappear, and I mean, I actually accepted it because I knew, okay, I'm retired. But I look at pictures and I'm like, how the hell did I ever look like that? You know? And I watch myself T-bar roll like 9 plates on a T-bar, and I'm like, man, I would die with like 4 or 5 plates right now. My biceps are off, you know. But man, I used to go in the gym and just like with that mindset, I just would kill it, you know. I miss that kind of training, you know. Not giving, I would spit on the floor there for sure. They used to get mad at the Gold's Gym in Vegas because they're like, man, you can't sit on the floor. But Phil Heath did did come and train with me 2 times, and he quit both times. We did back those 2 times. And Phil Heath, I never seen anything like Phil Heath respond to weights. Like, he can do like very little shit and just like blow up, you know. I don't think he's ever deadlifted in his life. I don't even think he squats anymore. His legs last year were super proof for Mr. Olympia. So I see him still making improvements. Like his legs, I thought were his weak point until last year. His legs looked super proof. But I think Kai would still challenge him on a good day if Kai really wanted to come back. And Kai's only, he's I think a year younger than me. I met Kai Green when he was 16, and he was natural bodybuilder, and he was phenomenal at 16. I thought he was like 22 years old. That's why, and he just had it from the beginning, and he's been training his whole life. I mean, Ronnie Coleman was natural when he competed as first Mr. Olympia, he got last place. He just had the genetics, you know. So a lot of these guys genetically just had it. I mean, that's kind of honestly how I really got into it, because I was like looked upon as a teenager. Even when I was 14, 15, I had muscles, and my sister's friends would come over and be like, man, your brother's so built, like, what's he do? Oh, he just does like the concrete work or whatever. And that's how I kind of like really kind of took interest, because I'm like, man, everyone thinks I'm pretty big. What if I worked out? What would I look like? That's when I started reading the books. I went to GNC and I bought that first book, and I read it when I was 16 and kind of learned about the training a little bit, and I joined the gym. But I was that kid. I would do every machine in the gym. So if there was a leg machine, I'd do every one of the leg machines, thinking, okay, this is how you do it. And then you watch people train in the gym, and no one knows what they're doing, most people. So I learned from them, and I was doing it wrong then, too. And then eventually, Chris kind of taught me a little bit, and then I started to kind of learn a little more. But I learned from magazines mostly, is about reading articles, and now I know that a lot of those articles weren't right either. I mean, I remember going and shooting for Flex, and saying, okay, what's your routine for back or whatever, and I say the exercise, and they'd be like, well, that doesn't look good shooting this exercise, so we can't shoot that one. So really, it wasn't always accurate. So sometimes you don't believe everything you see or read, you know. Any other questions, guys? Yes, sir.
Do you think that Victor beat you in 2007 then? Or?
Someone asked me that yesterday.
Because 2001 you should have won.
I know, but
you know what I mean. So you
I know,
but
before you weren't there, so. You know what? I'm happy I won. I think he looked good, but I still thought I came back good enough at night. But I feel, this is my opinion, could he have won? Yes. We could say that for any of the years. Okay, Ronnie could have beaten me in 06. Okay, he was good enough. I think Ronnie could have won that too. Victor he was so close so many times. I mean, we've heard the untapped potential of Victor Martinez, right? I don't think he was good enough because he didn't knock out the champ, which I always hated that saying until it was in my time, right? I think that he could have won, but he didn't bring in enough to really take it out, and he didn't do anything. I came back better at night. But I think when I lost in 08, I think because of 07, how close it was, hence I did lose in 08. Because now it was 2 years in a row I was slightly off, that I deservedly, they said, okay, we just got to give it to someone else, and that's why when I came back in 09, it kind of solidified everything. But 07, 08 were definitely off years. I had an infected shoulder that year, so it really threw me off in 07. And I knew that going into the show, and I actually thought about pulling out of the show, believe it or not. And I asked them, should I pull out of the show? And they said, you can't. Don't pull out. So, he could have. Do you think he should have won?
I'm going to say no, Aaron.
You give me a straight answer, bro.
Yeah, I reckon you should have, yeah.
Okay.
Alright, 2001 you beat Donny, don't you? So,
What's your name?
Jack.
What's it?
Jack.
I I'm gonna tell Victor when I see him, Jack from the new tape. Because he tells everybody every day he should have won that show. I just interviewed with Generation Iron for the
For being honest, he should have, shouldn't he?
What?
He should have, shouldn't he?
You should have?
He should have won though, shouldn't he? That year.
He shouldn't have won shit. That's your opinion. Good thing you were not my judgment. But they just said to me in Generation 9-3, they see Victor all the time in New York, and he tells them every time he should have won in 07. So, now I know who you're a fan of. I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate your honesty, though. I don't get upset about that stuff. Like I said, 01, maybe I could have won. I mean, the score showed I should have won. Like, that's the whole thing. I don't know what the scores were in 07. You need to go look that up, though, and see. Let me know. Who else thought I should have lost? Any other questions, guys? There's always controversy in bodybuilding. That's what makes it fun, right? Yes, sir.
With steroids being quite a big part of bodybuilding, especially in the modern era now, would you say if anyone who's sort of new to bodybuilding, is it better to build up a natural base to as far as it could possibly go and then
Listen, I wouldn't suggest any kid taking steroids. I think, from 19 forward, I think it's necessary to get to the top level, right? I think it's necessary to get in crazy condition at a certain amount of body mass. Once you get bigger, it's harder to get in condition without it. But yes, naturally try to build your physique as much as possible. Does everyone do that? No. Do you think, I didn't go 100% to my full genetic potential, I wouldn't think. But, I wanted to get to the level and be able to compete.
Yeah.
And I knew going to the team nationals, I looked around at those guys, and like I said, I lost the Grand Touring because I lacked the condition and the detail. I had big legs, but they weren't super separated, and that's really what the difference was, I thought. I was just a big kid. I just had genetics to be, bigger, but I knew the condition and the quality wasn't there. That's really what separates. You start adding in chemicals, But you got to be smart about it. You have to have a rhyme or reason. You can't be a guy that just goes kamikaze. And I feel bad for the generation now because they're not seeing what even 25 years ago, what we saw and what we're educated on, because it's so much information, bad information on the internet. So just make sure it's researched a little bit. And, if someone asks you about it or whatever, I would definitely steer them in the right direction. Buying stuff off the street is very dangerous. Listen, but back then they didn't even prescribe it. Now the doctors are prescribing it. The States is so popular now. Most guys just go to the doctor and get blood tests and test their testosterone and get the levels checked and get a prescription. It's getting a little more accepted now in an older age, right? Mick, any questions?
No, I'd just like to thank you for coming, and I'd like to thank everybody who turned up to support it as well.
Well, listen, I appreciate, when I set up this tour and Sufi and Zach kind of helped me put it together, I know they were the places that he said, oh, I know there'll be interest here. So obviously you have a following here, and I always look forward to coming to places like this. And when I pulled up outside, I said, this is really it. We pulled down this dark alley. He told me it was hardcore, but I didn't expect this hardcore.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come out here and speak and get with all the people. So, if we don't have any more questions, guys, listen, if you want to ask me questions on the side, I'm going to open that for that. But what I would like to do now, guys, is, I want everyone to be able to shake my hand and take a picture if everyone wants to do that. Anything from your side, I'd be happy to do that, and just interaction, just hang out, just kind of mingle a little bit, and we don't have to sit here as such a formal place. And anything else you guys want to ask? You don't want to ask in the crowd, but I think the pictures is important for people, right? You came here to take a picture. And You know, if you wanna flex, you can flex, you know. Okay, yeah. Jack, we'll step outside you and I. I definitely want a picture with you so I can send it to Victor. So thank you guys very, very much for coming out. And, you know, let's finish off strong here, okay, guys?